All right, so today we're going to be going over 401. Has anybody here heard about the 401 or know what it is already? So it's basically four weeks, 1 month, and 1 year. So ultimately, we all have goals we want to hit for the year, financial, personal, everything else. So this is basically an accountability sheet you can do to help you out through the process. Because it helps you break down all the way down to almost each day what your daily activities should be, which will help you reach your weekly goals, which will in turn help you reach your monthly goals, which should hopefully help in turn reach your yearly goals. So the sheet I hand out with you guys is just a basic sheet. They do have some fancier ones out there. If you guys don't know where it's at, you just go log on to kw.com. And if you go over to the resources tab, you go down and you'll see there's a little button that says 411 tools. So if you just click on that, it just gives you kind of a quick overview of what it is. They also have an online one, and then you can see as you scroll down. Let me get rid of this real quick. I want to minimize. I'll go away. So you can do it online. They also have one in Word. So they have a personal business one. I've seen some where the personal and the business are blended together. And it also has a quick little summary of what it is. But basically, when you use the 401, you have to look at it not as it's a to-do list, it's more of a have-to-do list. So things that go on there ultimately have to get done. You know, either you're going to be holding yourself accountable, or you'll have an accountability partner or some type of coach that will go over that with you. So I have an accountability partner right now. It's an MCA down in San Jose. So we meet, talk about ours once a week, go over, and then see how the last week went, and then how we're going towards reaching our monthly goals and our annual goals. So anytime you're thinking about a 401, basically it's going to cover 3 areas, which is your business, your personal financial, and then your personal as far as health. So a lot of people, you'll see they may have a 401 where they have all 3 of them on this sheet, where they'll have their yearly business goals, their yearly personal financial goals, and then their personal goals as far as personal growth, health, all that stuff. It also acts as a personal scorecard to reveal where you are and how you're doing towards your goal. So when you're looking at your annual goals, you want to put if you were starting one right now, you'd obviously want to put where you'd want to be in August of 2016. This is obviously a really good thing to start, at the beginning of the year, because then you can follow a calendar, but you can still use it anytime, even if you didn't start it in January. So, for example, you'd put what your business goals are for the year, and then record what your annual personal financial goals for the year, and then personal, which can be limited to. Says this includes but is not limited to your annual personal educational goals. So you could put personal health, personal growth, family trips. I've seen people put their vacations planned out that way, everything on here too, because they feel that's the only way they're able to actually, have a vacation. They really need to make sure they schedule it out. As far as the monthly goals, then you would break it down. Okay, so what key things do you need to accomplish this month? They're going to help you hit those business goals, those personal financial, or those ultimately, personal goals themselves. And then you break it out by each week. So then for each week, you would have what your business goals were, what your personal financial, and what your personal goals are. And most importantly, whatever you put on here, you really want to make sure you're holding yourself accountable to and doing it. If it goes on here and you see that you're just not hitting that goal all the time, then does it really need to be on here? Or is it something you're kind of skirting around the issue that you're trying not to work on? Or is it something? Because sometimes people will use this to, like in the past when I first did mine, I put a lot of stuff that probably should have been on there because it was simple stuff I was going to have to do during the month anyways. Just wanted to do a reminder. That's something that like a Google Calendar or something like that could take care of. This is just stuff daily that you're scoring yourself on that you want to hold yourself accountable.
So, Jessica, I had a question.
Sure.
So do you find it's better to have an accountability partner as opposed to you doing it on your own?
Normally, yeah. I mean, ultimately, it kind of just depends on your personality, your style. If you're able to hold yourself accountable, that can work too. But ideally, it's always good to have another person to bounce ideas off of. Then you'll be holding obviously them accountable too. So it'll be going both ways. And you just kind of go through the process together. But
you tried it both ways to kind of weigh it out, see which one works best?
yeah, because ultimately too, you have to find someone that you're comfortable with, that you're compatible with. As we all know, not all personality types are compatible. So that's the main thing too. You don't want to get into it and have it be something that you're just dreading doing. This is basically just a tool to kind of help you focus, on your day-to-day to reach what your yearly goals are. So the type of goals on the 401, when you're setting your goals, it's a 3-step process. So first you're going to begin with your annual goals. So for example, let's say going into next year, we'll just do easy math. You say, I want to close 12 homes next year. So if you want to close 12 homes, then you have to figure out what your manageable monthly goals are. So then, I would need to close at least one house a month, obviously, for that to happen. That would be the easy way, right? Easy peasy, tracking it that way. And then you break down the monthly goals into weekly goals or activities that will help you reach your monthly goals. So then you would say, okay, so I know each month, in the first week, then I better be setting appointments with buyers or sellers, to get listings, and then getting those things into contract as soon as possible. So it says, each year you want to set aside 1 to 3 days to think about and crystallize these one-year goals. So really, before you put anything to pen to paper, you're going to have to just do some searching upstairs of what you really want those numbers to be and how you want them to flash out. And then you're going to identify 5 to 7 key goals that you must achieve in order to feel that you've had a successful year. Consider all 3 categories. Business, what would you do, to impact your business? Which could be, I want to attend BOLD, I want to go to X amount of regional training classes, I want to try to go to Mega Camp, all that sort of stuff. If there's any marketing you want to add, hey, I want to try out Zillow for 3 months and see how it goes. Just make sure anytime you do anything like that, you're checking and making sure you're getting your return on your investment. Personal financial. So what improvements do you desire in your net worth? You want to reduce your liabilities, get rid of debt. Do you want to increase investments that you're doing, increase assets that you own or that you're trying to attain? Then lastly, personal, what do you desire to happen personally? Is it a health goal? Is it a family goal? Is it a spiritual goal? Or is it an educational goal? And that, when they say educational here, they more mean personal growth, stuff outside of real estate. So when you're going to set your monthly goals, it's a little simpler. You're not doing 1 to 3 days. You're going to set aside 1 to 3 hours each month to rethink and further refine your monthly goals. Then you break down your annual goals into monthly goals only for the current month. So you only write down the key activities that will lead to those monthly results for that month. You should have no more than 5 to 7 monthly goals. Do not plan any more than one month ahead at a time. So it's kind of like just think about what's right in front of you. You want to achieve that long-term goal, but you can't focus and stare at that long-term goal so much that you can't do the day-to-day activities. So it's keep it smart, keep it simple, keep it in front of your face. And like I said, make sure you don't do more than 5 to 7 because at that point you're just setting unrealistic expectations. You want to make sure you set something you can actually attain and something you're going to be able to reward yourself for. So once you get down to the weekly goals, you want to set aside 30 minutes to 1 hour each week to form goals for the coming week. It's a real good thing to do, honestly, probably as you're leaving Friday or first thing in the morning Monday. That's normally the best time to do it. Weekly goals are the actions or activities that lead to results. If you're going to say, I will contact 10 people each day, these goals are the steps you will take towards those monthly and annual goals. For example, when you're going to do financial, or when you're going to do for your real estate business, you also want to make sure you set goals in categories. So some of the suggestions they have here is they basically have 8 key categories you would want to go over. So the first one would obviously be leads, because that's kind of where it first starts at. So when you break that out into subsections, you would have the leads that you generated, the source of those leads, and then obviously you want to see the conversion rates. And then in the MRE book and in most of the Keller Williams stuff you guys are going to go through class on, they'll give you what the conversion rates and all that stuff is, so you know, hey, how am I faring compared to the average realtor when it comes to this sort of stuff. Second category would be listings. So you'd want to look at sellers listing taken and buyer listings taken. Another goal could be contracts written, which is what you put in escrow. So you always see most of the stuff will always start with a unit because it's a unit-driven business. And what they mean by that is you can't focus so much on the volume. You have to focus more on the units because as you get more and more units, the volume's going to come. Some people, it's kind of like when they say they're holding out for that management level job and they've never been to management. You can't shoot that high if you're not doing anything in the first place. You have to get something going, before you can work up to that. So on contracts written, they have number of units written, total written volume, and then gross income written, which would be the gross income that would come to you from what you put in a contract. The next goal category they have that you could go over, which would be contracts closed, which is, that's you finally getting money in your pocket, which is everybody's favorite part. You're going to have number of the units you closed, what the total volume closed was, and what your gross closed income was for yourself. As far as money, that's the next category they have. You would go over gross closed income, budgets. You want to create some kind of light budget for yourself. And I know in the beginning it can be kind of tough because you don't know what your true cost of business is going to be. So really for the first year, you kind of have to just track things, monitor them, see how they're going. Then in the second year, pretty much what your cost of business is. It's the same thing for us. Like when we first start open way back in 2006, they said, okay, we need a budget from you guys. How much are you guys going to spend on stuff? The first year, real literally, you're just throwing darts because you don't know. You know how much PG is going to be. You basically know how much salaries would be because salaries are set at that time and rent is, but everything else outside of that, it's all variable on, usage and stuff like that. You don't know how much the copier is going to be. You don't know when the copier is going to break down. You don't know how much the phone is going to be, any of that stuff. So the first year is more where you're just going to maintain and track and figure out, what your true operating expenses are. And then the third category under money would be, what your net income is. So what are you actually netting and taking home? Which is really, really important, especially in a 1099 industry, because I've seen it happen to many realtors before where, you look at it, if you earn a $5,000 check, yeah, you earned a $5,000 check, but how much did you actually net on the deal? So how much did you spend in advertising? How much did you spend on buying them dinner, driving them around town? All that stuff you have to factor in to see, how much you spent. And make sure, obviously, you track it so at the end of the year, you're going to get all your tax write-offs and all that stuff, too, because that's what goes as your operating expenses when you do your taxes. Another category, and this would probably be more for when you're looking at a team or adding somebody to your real estate business, which is people. So you could track, how recruiting's going, how the training's going, how the consulting's going. Number 7 is systems and tools. So what new systems or tools do I need to add? So basically it'd be looking at your business. If you're really tech savvy, but you're not getting a lot of leads from the internet, then that's something you could spend some time on, invest, maybe go to some classes and see how you can make that more work for you, more leveraged. Also, what current systems or tools do I need to improve or upgrade? So look at what you're currently doing, or are there areas you think, okay, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm doing it well, but it's taking up a lot of my time. So is there a system or a model that I can find out there that'll help me so I'm not spending as much time doing that and it's kind of just going on autopilot? The last category they have is education. It would be what knowledge do I need to learn and what skills do I need to acquire? So it's really, just kind of sitting in, looking, evaluating your business and seeing where your strengths are, where you can get better, and where there's opportunities for improvement. The biggest thing is anytime you go into a process like this, you got to set SMART goals. And SMART is, an acronym. So what it means is be S, specific, make sure it's tangible and precise when you're stating your goals. General goals are not compelling. For example, if you say, okay, so next year I want to net $70,000 in real estate, that's a real tangible, reachable goal. If you say next year I just want to put food on the table for my family, that's great. And it's great if you're able to do that, but it doesn't give clarity to what the vision truly is. So the second part of SMART is going to be M, which is measurable. So set the goals that are quantifiable. You need to be able to know if the goal is accomplished. So make sure you set goals that you can actually measure. We always say you have to inspect what you expect. So if you expect certain results, you have to be able to inspect it. If you can't, then you have to look at, okay, so what am I doing in my business to make sure I can be quantifiable? And that's honestly just going back to conversion rates and stuff like that. Looking at, okay, so if I'm meeting 10 buyers a month and putting them in my database and getting them on a market plan, but I'm only converting 1 or 2, what can I do? Because I know the conversion rate should be 65%. So what do I need to do to raise the bar to get it to there? The third letter, obviously, in SMART is A, for action-oriented. So the best goals drive you to take action, do something concrete. So what they're really saying there is make sure, it's a goal that you're passionate about. It's something that you're not just putting on paper. It's kind of like we talked about last week in class when we're talking about time management. Time management is really easy to just throw on your Google Calendar. We can all do that. The hard part is actually following and implementing it, so it's the same, premise. The next letter is going to be R, which is realistic, which I think is a huge one. So make your goals realistic but not pessimistic. So the most empowering goals require a stretch to achieve them. Ask yourself what the probability of accomplishing each goal is. A 50-50 chance is best, neither too difficult nor too easy. And I always can use the best analogy for myself was when I worked in the tech industry, and I was young and didn't really understand what was going on. We were always told at the company I worked at that we had profit share. There, it was totally different. It was basically wasn't based on the stuff here where it's based on who closes what and all that stuff and you adding your tree. It was just true if they had profit, they would profit share. But there, the way they did it was all based on growth. So for example, if they said, we need to grow our business by 20% this year, so if we hit that 20% mark, you guys are all going to get profit share. So if we only grew 18%, but the company still made millions and millions of dollars, we didn't get profit share. So it's kind of the same thing. Make sure it's realistic. Make sure whatever goals you're setting, are real goals. Don't be pessimistic about them, but also, understand, don't set the bar so high that you're going to frustrate yourself and then not even be able to go out and start to implement stuff because you're like, I don't know how in the heck I'm ever going to reach that goal. And the last one, which is T, make sure it's time bound. You must have a clear time limit or deadline for accomplishing your goals. So make sure you set, okay, I want to do X, the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. In all honesty, I can tell you from being here 9+ years now and being on lots of different coaching calls for different avenues in the Keller Williams system, almost anything you ever implement, you're really going to have to give it at least 90 days to see results. I mean, like when we're on our coaching calls with John Davis, we're talking about October, November right now. We're not talking about August. We're not talking about September. Because really what we're focusing on and doing in the office now, we're not going to see the results for 90 days. This isn't an instant business where there's some silver bullet that's going to make us wake up tomorrow and make a lot more money. Best case scenario, if we know even if we put a bunch of contracts in escrow, it's going to be anywhere from 15 to 30 days so you get paid. So it's just kind of that same premise. Make sure you have a clear time limit and that you have a deadline for accomplishing those goals. And also, I don't see anywhere on here where it says it, but it's kind of what we talked about last week too, is also make sure that you, as you set these goals for yourself, that you give yourself some kind of reward for it too, because you should be rewarded for hard work and dedication. So part of what the 401 also is figuring out what your reward is going to be for if you hit your weekly goals. That could be something obviously smaller, like take yourself out to dinner or a treat. Monthly goals could be going out, something, if you hit your goals, could be simply something like going out, buying yourself a new outfit or something like that. And then your yearly goals, you could do something as far as buying a new car, going on a trip with the family. You have to make sure you make it, like they said, smart, but also fun too, because when we're trying to reach towards a goal, it's always nice to be rewarded for that, not just in the, the dollars themselves. So I got a quick little video we're going to watch on KW Connect about 401s. Come on, it's too close.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into Insights into Ignite. This is Power Session 13, Accountability. Check in on the 411. My name is Les McGee. I'm one of the writers at Keller Williams University, and I'll be hosting this session today. And later on in the session, we'll be visited by one of our officers from IT at Keller Williams Realty International. Power Session 13, Accountability. Our first question is, are your students geared up for an open house this weekend? They should be. Don't forget that while using GoToWebinar questions field or when you're on the Ignite Instructors Facebook page, post any questions that you have. We want to be able to add that to our frequently asked questions documents and make them available to you across the board. Also, how did your most recent session go? We would love to hear your success stories and ahas from Teaching Ignite. Please share them on the Ignite Trainers Facebook page. If you have any immediate questions, you can send them to us during this webinar using the questions field. We will add these to the list of FAQs, which you can find on the Ignite Instructors page on MyKW. Next session of Ignite, we'll be teaching our session 10, Accountability. We encourage you to have your instructor manual in hand so you can make notes as we go through this webinar. The objective of this power session is to take the pulse of the students after the first week of Ignite. As you learn to rev up, the first couple of weeks of Ignite will be the hardest.
Here, let me find a different class. I apologize. That's the teacher's class, not the student's one. Okay, I'll have you guys watch this one. The other one's 36 minutes long. That's a little short. Now this one will kind of show you how the 401 apply to my role and how we would use it.
I'm Sharon Gibbons with the MCA Angel Division here in Austin, Texas, and today we're joined with George Herrera of the Bayside Queens, New York Market Center. We're welcome and glad to have you, George.
Thank you.
George, tell us about your career path with Keller Williams.
Well, my career path with Keller Williams started, I graduated from college, started looking for a job, like any college grad, looking for a job in my field, which is accounting. And, like anyone, through Craigslist, just posted my resume. I think it's somehow fate was part of it because my team leader is actually an entertainer. She's a professional singer. I was a professional dancer and also in the entertainment industry. So I think my resume jumped out at her because we were both entertainers. So I like to think somehow that had a play in it. And she called me, we met, we hit it off, and that's where I got my first start with Keller Williams. I didn't know anything about the company. Everything else beyond that was just a blessing after I joined.
And how long have you been with your Market Center?
Right now I'm going about 3.5 years with my Market Center. Yeah.
So you and your Market Center are leaders in your region, and I know that you spend a lot of time on 411 and time management, especially with other MCAs. So how does that relate to your specific job?
Well, the 411 is funny. I live by the 411 now, but for the first couple of years, it was just something I would hear, and I never really understood it. I tried to do it a few times. It never made sense, and I thought that it was just something like a myth, like it didn't work. But then my team leader asked me to teach time management with the 411, and of course I accepted. I'd like to any chance to teach in my Market Center. So I had to hit the books. I had to read the entire manual, watch the video with Dave Jenks, really try to understand it.
All right, we'll give it a second, but I don't think it's going to come back. All right. I apologize about that. We're having fun internet issues again. As you guys know, Comcast is always working on it, as they say when you call them.
Yep. Where it's on your end.
Oh yeah, they'll have you go through all the steps. So, let's see, where did we get off at? They have an example. I can come around and show you guys real quick. So it has like a talking about it. Yeah, I just have the book, y'all already see it. But here's like a sample 401 for an agent. So you can see how I was talking about, he has his annual goals, his monthly goals, and his weekly goals, and you can see it actually has the conversion rates and everything already on there, so you can just fill it out.
Mhm.
So these are basically the standards that when they look at all the realtors as a whole, that's what you should typically see. So for example, when you go on a seller listing appointment, typically an agent that's experienced, well scripted, all that will convert 80% of the appointments they go on. So if they go on 5, let's say they go on one a day, so if they go on 5 in a week, 4 of those should turn up into a listing that they acquire. On the buyer side, there's a little bit less of a conversion, 65%. So for example, we'll use a nice, easier round number. So if you had 20 buyer leads you got in a month and you worked them solidly and all that, that means if you're converting at the percentage you're supposed to, which is 65%, you would do 13. So what this really helps you do too is reverse engineer it. So for example, if you know your goal is to get 4 listings for the month. So you know then you would, if you're at an 80% conversion rate, you'd have to at least go on 5 listing appointments. So then you go back from that. So if you have to get 5 listing appointments, how many phone calls, and I'm just using phone calls as an analogy, but it's whatever your lead source is. So if you're primarily making phone calls, say on FSBOs, expired stuff like that, then you figure out, okay, so what's my conversion rate on that? So if I have to make 50 contacts to get 10 appointments, and then only 50% of those appointments are going to pan out. That's how you kind of reverse engineer it. So what they try to do is make it so you can actually reverse it, engineer it all the way down to the actual activities you have to do every day. So on this sheet, they also have, if you want to do what your personal financial, what your personal goals are for your year. So basically, as you're looking at it, it's just giving you a step-by-step process so you could actually go down. And you'll see a lot of this stuff is cyclical too, and it's tied into Ignite, it's tied into you're doing your daily, your weekly 10-core and all that, which shows that, somehow or some way you have to go out and generate business. You're either going to have to buy leads, do some sort of marketing. Open houses obviously are a good way, door knocking, walking neighborhoods. Going to, like as we learned last week, going to business areas where obviously you could pick up, if you have the right scripts, home buyers, home sellers at Home Depot, any place like that, anything that has anything to do with homes themselves, where they could buy lighting, where they buy pool, any of that stuff. People that obviously deal in purchasing houses and selling houses go into all those type of establishments. So it's also thinking outside the box. What other sources have I not looked at that I can go into? I know I've heard years before, for example, if you have somebody that in your family that's a doctor or a teacher, or even if you have a member that's in the military, those are all different avenues you can try. Because, for example, I don't think there's anybody still that really owns all of Bill Our First Base. We used to have an agent here. She used to do fairly well because she used to pay for advertising, and they have like a relocation book they give you. When a family airman moves out here, they give them a relocation book that has all the local stuff as far as restaurants and all that. So they have her picture in there. So that's what helped her get business. So ultimately, you have to figure out. It's good to have goals. It's good to be able to plan out. So you have to figure out, in the next year, where do I want to be? So if you figure out where you want to be and you're committed to it, then the 401 will help you reverse engineer, the plan on how to get there. For example, on here, this person, had a goal of, for a personal goal, they had, lose 15 pounds. So they know if they need to lose 15 pounds for his monthly goal, he's saying, then I need to run at least twice a week. So if you go all the way down to his daily goals for the first week, he would have run 3 miles on Monday and Wednesday. So what I will go back and reiterate too is anytime you set any sort of goals, make sure they're realistic and attainable as we go back to the SMART acronym. For example, last week when I used Leanne as an example, she has set hours that she has to lead generate each day. But we know each Tuesday she goes over the board for the in-laws tour, and then she goes out on tour of the homes afterwards. So normally every day her time block to make calls that she's doing right now with her door shut is 9 to 12. But on Tuesday, there's no way she can do it from 9 to 12 because she's actually lead generating. She's doing more face-to-face lead generating. So that's the other side of the coin too, is don't just put something on the calendar or on your 401 just to have it on there. If you're going to put it on there, make sure you're going to try to attain it, because that's what's going to help you reach your goal. The other big thing obviously with accountability is make sure you have an accountability peer partner. you're on a team, you can choose someone else on a team. Find someone you fit with well, and then you should ideally meet with them at least once a week, if worst case scenario, every 2 weeks.
Great question. How do you hold your partner accountable? You make them buy you lunch or something if they don't do X amount of things?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Eric. I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, so that's one of the other things too, is how do you hold someone accountable? So you don't want to be heavy-handed and discourage them. I can tell you, I think you guys are all at the Tony Brody training. I've seen people go as high as even like where if you're with a coach, I know a lot of MAPS coach will do that. So for example, if you guys were starting MAPS coaching and you say, my goal is to get at least 10 solid leads this month. So we go over, which way you're going to lead generate and all that stuff. If you don't hit your goal at the end of the month, they would have you write a check now, to your favorite charity, and then they would hold that check. And then if you hit your goals, they tear the check up. If you don't, they mail it off. So yeah, you got to do, and you guys, if you've been to Bold, it's part of the whole pleasure and the pain. You have to, at the end of the rope, you have to be able to enjoy it, but at the beginning, you have to have what's the repercussions if I don't hit my goals. So typically, yeah, I've even seen it as cheesy as people having to wash in other people's cars. It's ultimately, when you know that person, their personality, what's going to help motivate them. Because you don't want to unmotivating them by giving them a task, there's no way they're ever going to do. But there also has to be some pain involved to make them want to hit that goal. For example, in my world, it's kind of funny for me to get awards. I have to do 3 basic things. For agents and for the offices themselves, all the awards are based on production. For myself, obviously, I don't produce. So for me to get an award, because I do have an MCA award, 3 things have to happen. The first one is when we transmit at the end of the month, we can't be owed any money from the agents. So we either have to have a 0 or a negative balance. And a negative balance means people have credit because maybe they paid for 6 months of their bills. We have some agents that will sign up, will pay, just, hey, what's my office bills for the year? I just want to pay it now so I don't have to think about it. The second criteria is I have to transmit on time. So for example, this week, because this was the first week of the month and I transmitted for July, I had to transmit by the end of the day on Wednesday. So if you don't do that, the motivation is we get fined $500. So that's a pretty big motivation. We've never been late once. I honestly have never heard or personally know of any market center that's been late, but that's their stick. Their stick is if you don't transmit on time, they're going to fine you $500. And then lastly, the third criteria for myself is, you guys are going to laugh, the money has to be in the bank. So when we collect royalty, we obviously have to pass it and pay it on to International. So we close out our month, but they don't actually take the money until the 7th business day. So by that 7th business day, you have to make sure there's money in the account. They don't want to pull a auto withdrawal and have it come negative. So we've obviously never had that issue either. But I think, that's the big thing. Anytime you're holding someone else mutually accountable, you have to have that respect, but you do have to create an environment of what's going to be the end result if you don't hit your goals. For me, it's a little simpler. I have things I have to do every day, and if I don't hit my goals, if I don't do my job, I'm out the door. That's a little simpler. It's a little more clear cut. With you guys, it's a little tougher because you're not paid an hourly wage. You don't have a boss sitting over your shoulder all day saying, hey, you have to do X, Y, Z. The boss you have all day is right here, which sometimes can be the nicest boss and other times can be the toughest boss.
And hopefully it's not that drunk monkey, right?
Yeah.
It's bossing you around.
Well, and that's the thing too. That's why it's always good to have someone else, because then sometimes they can help coach you. Everybody's going to have up and down moments. So maybe if you're having a down moment, they can help you through that. Maybe they've faced some of that frustration before. That's one beauty of, Keller, everybody's totally willing and open to share information. So for example, if you come to a team meeting and you ask a question, it's pretty hard not to get a decent answer out of it because there's so much experience and knowledge in the room. I think one of the hardest things for somebody coming into this industry, if they've had another job and they've especially never worked, one as an independent contractor, but 2 in real estate, is that it's totally different. I've had jobs before where you show up, they hand you a book and it tells you how to do your job A to Z, and that's it. Easy to do, easy peasy. Real estate, it's not like that. We can, as you're going through either mentorship or somebody's help coaching you or training you, we can guide you on how the transaction should basically go. But as you guys know, things go sideways, fun things happen all the time. There's a lot of people out there who have a lot of different agendas and motivation. So when you actually go out there on the street, sometimes you're like, man, you always hear agents joke that, I've sold houses that are anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000 and never had any problems. And it seems like once I get down to a $50,000 house, which unfortunately you're not going to earn as much commission on, they're the biggest pains in the butt. And normally you'd think it would be the other way around because you're dealing with, a more expensive house that has different things they have to inspect and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to find someone else to hold yourself accountable. Somebody you're comfortable with, someone that can follow up and meet with you at least once, if not or at least once a week, if not bi-weekly, so you can go over your goals. Okay. And it's not like it's some long drawn-out meeting. Honestly, it shouldn't take more than 10, 15, 20 minutes. And on the other side of the coin, too, the meeting shouldn't just be about that either. For example, our coach, who's a MAPS coach, and he's actually a MAPS coach that coaches other MAPS coaches in the MAPS system. He's like, Diana Kokosa, we have meetings sometimes where we don't even talk about what I've talked about with my students. We just go over family stuff. So yeah, we're there to hold each other accountable. She's there to hold him, more importantly, accountable because he's in charge of a unit in the MAPS division. But he's like, sometimes all we end up talking about is just like family stuff. So it can't be all business either. It's got to be, you got to have that personal touch. You have to look at it just like you would with your sellers and your buyers. That more of the relationship you have established with them, the more they're going to connect with you, the more loyal they're going to be to you, the more you're going to be able to receive more business down the road. And most importantly, there's a class Keller teaches on that's called Fierce Conversation. So if you guys don't know what a fierce conversation is, it's basically a fancy way of saying an argument. It's really what it is. So at the end of the day, we all have things we're going to disagree on, but if you have that relationship established, then when you have to have that conversation, it's a lot easier because you have that mutual respect. And you're able to get over roadblocks and things that come up a lot easier because you have that respect there. We've heard questions, I'm going to get on my soapbox for it. We hear questions and issues all the time and I was coaching one of our new agents the other day, and I'll coach Eric on this now. It's kind of like when they talk about procuring cause. Procuring cause is a gray, foggy mess. People say it's clear cut, and it's not. And honestly, the BRE, if they want to do, they could step in and fix it in about 2 seconds. They have win forms, they expect us to use them, but they don't really sometimes follow through on things. So what I really mean is, for example, with buyers, trust me, I totally get it that it's tough sometimes to get a buyer to sign a buyer-broker agreement. Now, one of the reasons it's hard to do that is because no one really does it. So if everybody was forced to do it, it'd be a lot easier. If everybody was forced to do it by the BRA and said, hey, if you don't have that buyer-broker agreement and you're working with a buyer, you're not going to get paid. If they established that as the way it was, everybody would do it. So one, it would be a lot easier to sell to the customers. Two, it would take procuring cause totally off the table because that's a gray, fuzzy mess. It says, I have this relationship established with this client and they're my client. So then you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your client. Then you have to worry about going to the board and having them pick sides on who should actually get paid. Because they make it like procuring cars is really easy to understand, but it's not. We've seen situations here in this office, with agents we've had where it's pretty gray. Under the same token, you have someone who's worked with someone for years and years and years, and all of a sudden decides they don't like that person anymore, even though they've bought 12 houses from in the past, and now they want to work with someone else. Now that person who sold them the 12 houses has a pretty decent chance if they go fight at the board with procuring cause because they have a proven track record that they work with that client. But what happens if that client doesn't legitimately want to work with them anymore? Should they be stuck to still work with that person because of what happened in the past? No, it's a free market here. You have a choice to work with who you want. So it's kind of the same thing. I know if you guys search around the internet, there are actually, the 401 isn't something that's just solely Keller Williams. I believe we actually got it from somewhere else. There used to be a website called Productivity Warriors, and I don't know what the new name of the website is. So that's where we actually go to get it. So like I said, you could search around. There are some fancier, snazzier versions. If you log in, you can honestly do the online version too, which will be in your kw.com. You can track it there. But the big thing is, just making sure you have some goals. Because if you don't have goals, it's kind of like driving around without, a map. If you kind of know where you want to get to, you can probably get there. But it's a lot easier if you have a roadmap to help you get, or if you at least know what the roadmap is, to get there. So it helps bring clarity to what you're trying to do. Because in this business, you have so many different things flying by you at so many different times and so many different speeds. It's hard to sometimes juggle all those balls while they're in the air. So this can help it, make it a lot easier. You guys have any questions or any ahas?
My only aha was figuring out what the pain is if I don't meet my goals.
Yeah, honestly, that's a tough thing because, you want to make it painful, but you don't want to make it so painful that it's going to make you not want to do it. Because there's always that other end of the spectrum too, So, yeah, honestly, most of the ones I've always heard were monetary, which I know not everybody can do and can be tough. And I know me personally, I would have a huge issue with giving someone a check for $200. That's just my personal thing. Unless I'm actually buying something, that's just how I am.
Getting something in return.
So it can be tough, but just be smart about it. Think of how you can do it strategically. And then, the big other piece obviously is, ideally, if you can find someone else you can work with that you're compatible with, it's always good to have a peer partner. Because at times, we can be our own worst critic or we can be our biggest ego pusher ourselves. So it's, how do you delicately do that balance of, for me, for years, I didn't have a peer partner. And then there's a couple different private groups that I belong to on Facebook. One of them is just for KWMCA. So I know the girl down the Barry because she's been MCA for 5 or 6 years. So she had posted, hey, I need an accountability partner. I said, hey, let's do it because, I'm close by too. So now it's great. We meet once a week. So now I'm actually back to using the 401 and using it at a high level because just like him, I was using it for a while, but if you're not constantly meeting it, going over it, you're just basically putting words on a piece of paper that you may or may not follow at some point. But the big thing is, first, slow down, take some time to figure out, what you want your goals to be, and then, just taking time to write them out. And if you ever have any issues with it, you can come brainstorm with Peter, you can brainstorm with myself, you can brainstorm with Leanne. April will help you too. Because it can be confusing, at times. Like he said, in the beginning, I didn't really understand what the 401 was or what its real purpose was. Because honestly, I've never had a lot of problems staying on track or reaching my goals, but there's no reason I can't be more laser focused and, be more efficient in what I do too. The main thing I would say, honestly, the 401 helps me do, it helps me be more efficient with my time. It helps me look at things from the outside and where you may think, okay, well, I'm doing it this way, but is there a smarter, better way that I could do it for myself that makes it, take less time or take less effort? Because ultimately, that's what the 401 can help you. It's kind of like when we meet with agents, we're trying to recruit them, it always comes down to normally one of three things, which is they either want to make more money or they're comfortable making the money they're making, but they want more time with their family, or they want both. It always almost goes back to those three things. Because either you want more money because you want more wealth to do more things for your family, for your kids, or you're comfortable where you're at, you're doing okay financially, but you're like, I just wish I had more time to spend on this or that. So it's giving you guys tools and ways to, figure those things out, and then how you can help apply them in your life. As you guys have seen, most of the stuff that we learn at Keller, when it isn't specific to, actual real estate itself or lead generation or something like that, they can be applied in other businesses and other avenues of your life. So that's, where you can help. That's one big thing with this 401. It's one of the few things I've done where they actually have you go over your personal financial and your personal goals, developmental goals for yourself. A lot of the other stuff, we don't go about that, that far down. We just kind of talk about, hey, where are your numbers at? How you doing? How many appointments you had? Where are you trying to get to? Because at the end of the day, you have to like what you do, and you have to like who you work with, and you have to like who's holding you accountable. There's nothing worse than doing something just for the sake of doing it. You want to do it because you're passionate about it, because you love it, and you see a future in it. Anything else you guys got as far as questions or ahas? For all those thinking.
Thank you. I was thinking about what you were saying earlier. A lot of agents, come in and they haven't worked in real estate and they have like another job.
Mm-hmm.
It's my
Yeah,
situation.
exactly. Yep.
And one of the things I'm finding is it's easy to get lost out there if you have another job and there's this disconnect. So you have to continue to do things to stay connected. And that's what I'm finding I need to do more of. You know, because as you stay connected, it motivates you to do more, you know, to do more with your real estate business. But, you know, if you're just focusing on your other job most of the time, and you don't think about real estate as much, there's this disconnect.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to get into the office when I can and those types of things, and read all the emails and stay connected with what's going on in the office and all the educational things, whatever's available. Take advantage, because there can be a disconnect.
Well, and things change on a dime all the time in real estate
Exactly.
too. And you want to be knowledgeable. You want to know what's going on, and that's the thing. Things change every couple months. We still don't know what the long term. Not that I think there's going to be some big grill in the room because of the CFPB, but because we have like the CFPB stuff starting in October, we don't know how that's going to affect closings. It may or may not.
Are we gonna have a class on this?
Yeah, I believe Janelle's going to come and teach some. It's the consumer, basically what it is, to water it down for you guys if you don't know what it is. When we had the last run up in the market, there were people who signed stuff they didn't understand what they were signing. Either the lender didn't explain it to them right, or they just didn't understand it, or maybe the lender didn't explain it to them at all. So all these new forms are basically trying to help clarify that. So when someone buys a house, they can't come back later on and say, I don't know what I did. I mean, for example, I had a friend, still have a friend, I should say, like he's gone, but a couple years ago, he knew I was in real estate. He knew I was in the accounting department, but he was asking me some questions about his loan. He's like, hey, you know what? My loan was like $650 a month. Now it's jumped up to $850. Do you know what's going to jump up to next? I have no idea. It's like, what kind of loan do you have? It's like, I don't know. I just refied the house and got 35 grand and spent it on the bike and boat and everything else. I'm like, so did you do an option arm? Did you do an interest only? Because those are two totally different things. Interest only, I know it's going to kick up on multiple levels, but option arms, those can be even more trickier because you guys remember those? That was the one where they gave you 3 options in the beginning. You could pay less than what your actual mortgage payment is, and whatever your shortage you paid got added onto your loan until that period expired. Or you could at least pay the interest, or you could make a full payment, which the average person's going to say, hey, I'm going to take the cheap payment and not worry about them adding that to my principal. So he didn't know. So, he's a friend and I have to give him as much grace as I can, but I don't know, if he was duped. I don't know if he just wasn't paying attention when he signed the paperwork. So that's ultimately what these forms are trying to avoid, so they don't get people who don't understand what they're signing. Because there were a lot of people after the last run on the markup who were like, I didn't understand what I was signing. I didn't understand what I was getting into. My lender didn't explain it to me. The closing officer, my agent didn't explain it to me. So they're trying to avoid situations like that. We are going to see a shift in the market at some point because, as I've kind of gone over lately, affordability is slowly starting to creep in. It's more and more of an issue. And also, I know there were a lot of HELOCs that were done back in 2004, 2005, 2006. All they were on 10 years, so those were home equity line of credits that people had, and they also obviously had them when the market was hot. So, for example, if they bought a house $200,000 in 2003, it was probably worth $350,000, $400,000 by 2006. So they did the home equity line of credit at that point, which they could probably get $200,000. So a lot of people didn't have to pay on those for 10 years. So now those are going to start coming due starting this year. So we'll kind of see how that. It's not like I think there's going to be some huge flood. I don't think we'll see anything like we saw last time. But we may see some more REOs start to come into the market and stuff like that because, those people are just going to give up because they're going to be like, hey, I can't pay that much for this house. It's kind of like years ago when they were selling the pipe dream of getting a loan modification done. It was really tough to get a loan modification done, 1. And 2, the banks were very dishonest in telling people, honestly, their whole goal during the trying to get your loan adjusted period was just to keep information on you. So they could basically try to prove at some point in court that you're lying, you can actually pay for this house, but you're trying to say you can't. That was 1. And 2, they were actually doing it for lead generation because now they have all your information they can sell to someone else. More importantly, what they saw was typically anybody that got a loan mod done, it was something crazy like 85, 87% of those people that got loan modifications done went back in default 6 months, within 6 months of the loan modification being done. Because they thought they wanted to keep the house, like, I'm going to do it. I put a couple of years into this. I know I'm upside down, but it would mean the family really love the house. We want to keep it. All they were really doing on most of those loans was they were putting you on a 40-year or 50-year loan. So now you're going to be paying even more than what you were paying before for the house when you look at, you know, the amortization over the whole period. So then after, you know, 6 more months of that, people are like, I'm just giving up. I can't spend that much for this house. I can't, you know, have a $180,000 house and pay $650,000 for it. It makes no sense. And that was something disingenuous. You know, the banks were making it seem like they were throwing people a bone, but they really had their own motivations. That's what people have to realize at times. Any other ahas or? No? You guys have a good weekend. I think we have another class on Monday, which should be session 14.
9 o'clock?
Yep, 9 o'clock.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
You guys have yourselves a good weekend.
Oh, yeah, you too, Justin, thank you.
So are you a football fan at all, Geraldo?
Yeah.
You a Niners fan?
Oh,
You're a Raiders fan
Okay.
then, right?
I'm a Saints fan.
Oh, man.
Okay, we can talk a little shop for a minute, but let me stop this real quick. Did you guys see what happened this morning to the Niners?
No, what happened?
Alden Smith got popped for a DUI,
Again.
hit and run, vandalization last night. So he's done for at least a year.
Gone. He's gone, man. Niners should cut him.
And they're
Well, it's funny because Jed York, I think that's